I went in the basement with my mom, and our TV came on, and the weather guy was like, "It's in Trotwood," and it touched down. So we got into the closet, and we huddled there under the stairs. At least 30 minutes or so. It seemed like forever, honestly. And then we woke up the next morning, came back upstairs. When we walk out here, we see this, and it's awful.
It was the scariest thing I've ever been through, and it was the loudest thing I've ever heard.
Like a jet engine taking off.
I couldn't even imagine what would have happened if that would have ripped off, because it was just sucking everything.
All you could hear is this roaring, and here you could feel it trying to suck you out of the basement.
If there's one day you don't really expect or want severe weather to go completely rogue, that's none other than the holidays. And this is especially true when you're celebrating get-togethers during warmer moments, like Memorial Day, a time when the picture-perfect scene is for everyone to enjoy barbecue, visit the park, or watch fireworks. But unfortunately, on May 27th, 2019, the weather would ultimately betray the Memorial Day celebrations of Ohio residents. Because what would start off as a bright, sunny day filled with grilling burgers and picnics ended up in a catastrophic evening, filled with 19 tornadoes spawning left and right, one being a destructive EF4 twister. When it comes to severe weather, or more specifically, large tornado outbreaks, there's really only two ways for the forecasting scenario to play out. 1. The possible tornadoes can be predicted days ahead of time, like it was in the case of the Super Outbreak 2011.
Everyone into a bunker, please, immediately. There is a tornado heading this way.
When forecasters knew as early as 5 days before that conditions would become intense.
As we got closer to Wednesday, April the 27th, those key ingredients were even more prominent. If the science was right, it was going to be a terrible day.
In fact, 2 days prior, the National Weather Service warned that taking precautions on April 27th could save your life.
A moderate risk, this was actually issued yesterday for us, that far out is unheard of from the Storm Prediction Center.
The second scenario is the complete opposite, forecasts being unclear until hours prior to the tornado outbreak. For obvious reasons, this puts a lot more people at risk, especially if everyone's just expecting a good time, not minding the news, having a next-door party, or worrying if their phone is even charged. Unfortunately, May 27th, 2019, turned out to be a part of the second scenario. There were very few signs that the weather would become severe until the day of the event. Kristen Cassidy, who worked at the National Weather Service branch in Wilmington, Ohio, was enjoying her Memorial Day Monday on May 27th, 2019, with her family. She had checked the SPC Outlook earlier that morning and knew there could be bad weather, but the signs weren't pointing to anything catastrophic. Even if severe weather does occur, it would likely hit northern Illinois or northern Indiana. After all, the radar hints that the main threat for southwestern Ohio was probably just damaging winds. So much like everybody else, she spent the morning and afternoon grilling and enjoying a barbecue with her loved ones. The day was going as well as expected, if not better, until she received this text message at 6:30 p.m. Hey Kristen, we are growing increasingly concerned about the severe threat tonight, and we are probably going to need a few extra people in here this evening. Are you available to come in at 8 p.m.? Unbeknownst to Kristen, her team at the National Weather Service office in Wilmington, Ohio, had been spending most of the afternoon keeping a close eye on very disturbing signs of an atmosphere primed for tornadoes.
When I came in that evening, I was assigned to social media and to answer phones, and storms ended up expanding so quickly that we initially had 2 radar operators, and that actually turned into 5 people at one point that evening issuing tornado warnings.
The low-pressure system sitting in the Midwest was continuously progressing toward the Great Lakes, and the conditions were just waiting for storms to blow up. The high-resolution rapid refresh models, which are used to simulate storms over the next several hours, had given ambiguous results in the morning. Storms could either bow out into a line, posing a threat only of hail or winds, or they could remain discrete, separated supercells capable of very strong tornadoes. However, by the afternoon hours, these models all began to point to the same possible outcome, which was the worst-case scenario. The storms were shaping into isolated supercells that, based on the ingredients available, could be very, very dangerous. Around that time, CAPE, convective available potential energy, had climbed to 2,500 to 3,000 joules per kilogram in western Ohio, providing plenty of fuel for explosive thunderstorms. Wind shear was also significant, with 40 to 50 knots of change, and the strongest winds concentrated just 1 to 2 kilometers above the ground, favoring storm rotation. Meanwhile, a warm front lifting across the region was pulling in ample moisture, and a strengthening low-level jet after sunset was adding extra lift and organization. Instability, moisture, lift, and shear, the main ingredients for tornadoes, were all in place. Kristen stops romanticizing her holiday burger and pulls up the latest weather radar on her phone. Good news. It'll take the storms at least a couple of hours before entering their forecasted area. But then, bad news. There's no stopping these storms from becoming ferocious monsters. Kristen left her party at 7 p.m. and joined what eventually became a full 8-man team at the National Weather Service office in Ohio. By 8:20 p.m., the SPC, which was closely coordinating with Kristen's team, issued a tornado watch for portions of eastern Indiana and western and central Ohio. But for what's being forecast to come this night, it seemed like tornado watches weren't ever going to be enough to warn people. So, the National Weather Service made it a priority to relay the threat through all methods possible. One of those methods was flooding social media with warnings and alerts. Kristen took the helm of this effort at the Wilmington office, and she tweeted urgent updates about the approaching storms, one after another. In total, 5 discrete supercells would ultimately produce the 19 tornadoes that struck Ohio. But even before any of these twisters landed, the SPC was quick to give out tornado warnings as the supercells moved closer to vulnerable communities. Earlier warnings didn't result in any tornadoes, but the one issued at 9:36 p.m. for counties in west central Ohio would prove critical, as the first tornado in the area would touch down there. 9:48 p.m. The first tornado of the night touched down at the Indiana-Ohio state line. This EF1 tornado would go on to damage trees, completely remove barn roofs, collapse exterior walls, and uproot trees. It was strong, but with maximum wind speeds of around 90 miles per hour, it was not catastrophic. During its lifetime of 2 minutes, it tracked 100 yards and traveled 1.5 miles. Around this time, weather stations, which took over regular TV programming, were also blaring the severe threat to thousands of homes. They weren't just relaying warnings already issued, but also highlighting areas that could potentially receive tornado warnings, giving people more time to prepare.
This new part of the storm is strengthening, and it's going to start to head right along the Preble and Darke County line. And the tornadic threat's probably going to be at or just south of the Preble and Darke County line.
By 10:02 p.m., a new tornado touched down just west of Salina, near the intersection of Township Line Road and Bunker Hill Road. This twister would go on to become an EF3 strength monster, killing one and injuring several others.
And it's not just here, it's out of town. Really sad. And these people, where do they go?
Initially, it only tore off roofs of barns along Bunker Hill Road and snapped trees with 18-inch trunks while it was at EF1 strength. But then, it rapidly proceeded to damage homes and outbuildings along Mud Pike Road. its winds destroying sections of homes and damaged several exterior walls, indicating it has reached EF2 strength. Then, the monster entered Salina. Here, entire neighborhoods were torn apart. Roofs and exterior walls collapsed. A 300-foot cellular tower crumpled to the ground, and one house was carried nearly 70 yards before being thrown to a nearby field. It was in this area that the tornado reached its maximum strength of EF3, with winds peaking at 150 miles per hour. Tragically, the lone fatality of the outbreak also occurred here, when a vehicle became airborne and struck a house, killing a resident inside.
Ruth Hanna's uncle, Dale Hanna, lived 3 doors down. Dale Hanna was the first person to lose his life in the tornado when a car blew through his bedroom.
You remember the good times, but it was so sad and tragic.
The tornado continued eastward into a dense neighborhood near Tuval Street, where more than 24 homes suffered catastrophic damage. Cars were displaced, and mud splattered on the structures. From here, the tornado began to weaken, and it finally lifted just northeast of State Route 197. In total, this EF3 tornado lasted for 15 minutes and carved an 11-mile path across central Mercer County, and its touchdown was noticed by meteorologists on air using debris trackers.
That debris signature appeared and intensified, so that, to me, I'm going to go ahead and say that there was a tornado on the ground at this point.
About 5 minutes ago.
About 5 minutes ago in Salina.
While the Salina EF3 tornado was on the ground, the third tornado of the night also spawned at 10:04 p.m. Like the first on the ground, this one was EF1 strength and only lasted 2 minutes. Its damage was limited to minor roof and brick damage, as well as broken windows. The complete opposite of how the fourth EF3 tornado that touched down at 10:25 p.m. in West Milton. Initially, this twister's damage was limited to trees, but as the tornado approached State Route 571, the structural damage became much more severe. Farther along South Range Line Road, the damage intensified. 2 homes lost their roofs entirely, and one suffered collapses on the second-story walls. Mud splattered everywhere, and even the vehicle's interiors were coated with dirt inside. The tornado grew wider as it crossed Elman Road, and when it continued to cross State Route 47, it unleashed its peak maximum winds. A trailer home was flipped over, and the resident inside suffered broken ribs. The walls of a sturdy brick home also collapsed, and the roof was torn away. In a nearby trailer home, a family survived by sheltering in an interior bathroom, and when the storm passed, those bathroom walls were the only ones still standing. When it crossed Kessler Road, the tornado began to weaken as it turned southeast, and the storm finally dissipated shortly after it reached Nashville Road. This EF3 tornado remained on the ground for 19 minutes, injured 1, and had a maximum wind of 140 miles per hour. While the West Milton EF3 tornado was on the ground, another EF1 tornado touched down close to Kettlersville Road, just south of the intersection with County Road 33A. This twister caused damage to barns, lifted and rolled grain silos, and pulled roofs off a 19th century residence. The majority of its destruction affected power poles, barns, and outbuildings. But when it destroyed an outbuilding west of the County Road 33A overpass across US Route 33, a portion of the lifted debris dropped on the road, crushing a semi-truck and injuring the driver. This tornado lasted for 33 minutes, with a maximum wind speed of 110 miles per hour. 6 minutes after this fifth tornado dissipated, at 10:41 p.m., the worst tornado, the EF4 tornado that carved a path from Brookville, Trotwood, and through Dayton, touched down. This tornado touched down west of Brookville, and while it started by causing minor EF0 tree damage, it quickly intensified to high-end EF2. As it entered the city, numerous homes sustained severe roof damage, and a small automotive business was completely destroyed. Brookville High School and a wastewater treatment plant had large portions of their roofs removed. As the tornado moved into northern Trotwood, it reached EF3 strength. Over 1,100 buildings were partially damaged or completely destroyed. 500 homes sustained damage, and 59 were destroyed to the ground. The eastern part of the city saw even more destructive damage. The Hera Arena had multiple walls and roofs removed, causing $7.5 million in damage, and resulting in the building being demolished the next year. Within Trotwood, 4 people were injured and hospitalized, and about 30 people were relocated due to loss of access to breathable air and medication. As it entered Dayton, the twister maintained its high-end EF3 intensity and then reached EF4 strength. Right off the bat, major damage occurred to restaurants, shops, and self-storage units. At the Evans Arena car dealership, 154 cars were totaled, and 50 others were partially damaged. As the tornado moved to Frederick Pike, it reached EF4 strength, and large brick apartment buildings sustained damage. Foxton Apartments were also severely damaged, and along the Stillwater River, large swaths of hardwood trees were knocked down and debarked. Continuing north of downtown Dayton, the tornado reduced back to EF3 strength, but was still strong enough to cause widespread damage along North Dixie Drive and Wagner Ford Road. Everything in the twister's path, from gas stations, industrial buildings, churches, hotels, and homes, was either partially damaged or completely destroyed. Even the North Plaza shopping center couldn't escape the destruction. A small car dealership was leveled, and Grafton Kennedy Elementary School was left unrecognizable, forcing community students to relocate the next day. More factories, industrial buildings, and vehicles were left unusable after this EF4 tornado. Luckily, the tornado further weakened as it passed near the Dayton Children's Hospital, but it was still strong enough to blow down metal truss transmission towers and damage parked semi-trailers. The tornado dissipated after it exited the city of Dayton's limits. But even during its last few minutes, it still managed to tear roofs off duplexes and apartment buildings. This EF4 tornado ultimately reached winds up to 170 miles per hour, with a peak width of 960 meters. During its 32-minute lifetime, it caused $500 million in damages. While the EF4 tornado was on the ground, 4 weak tornadoes also touched down. The 7th and 8th tornadoes were both EF0 and simultaneously touched down in Auglaize and Miami counties. The one in Auglaize remained on the ground for 7 minutes, while the one in Miami lasted 16 minutes. Both caused only minor roof damage and mainly affected trees along their path. The 9th tornado spawned in Auglaize County again at 11:01 p.m., but it only lasted for 1 minute and only managed to snap a few trees. Mimicking the trend, the 10th tornado was also EF0 and lasted 1 minute near Alkany and Elizabeth Township in Miami County. Again, this twister only managed to cause minor damage. But the next tornado that touched down at 11:12 p.m. wouldn't be as calm. This soon-to-be EF3 tornado formed just south of the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Riverside, Ohio, and immediately reached EF2 strength as it tore through the prairies and properties at Wright Field military housing developments. The tornado then grew wider and more intense as it moved east, downing power poles and stripping trees of branches and bark. As it entered Beaver Creek, a densely populated suburb of Dayton, it reached EF3 strength. Entire homes were destroyed along Rushton Drive, reduced to just a few interior walls, while nearby neighborhoods saw high-end EF2 damage. It regained EF3 intensity as it tore through the Fairfield Lakes apartment complex, where multiple buildings lost roofs and upper exterior walls collapsed. In Spicer Heights, EF2 damage continued with roofs torn off, walls damaged, and vehicles battered by flying debris. The tornado weakened to EF1 as it passed over Shaw Elementary School and nearby apartments, causing minor roof and tree damage, before strengthening again to EF2 near North Fairfield Road. Here, restaurants, businesses, and office buildings sustained severe damage, with some roofs and walls ripped off and debris piercing structures. Eastward, it gradually weakened through residential neighborhoods in rural areas, causing EF0 to EF1 damage before dissipating north of Xenia. Overall, this low-end EF3 tornado carved a 10-mile path during its 20-minute lifetime, reaching winds of 140 miles per hour, and caused roughly $50.5 million in damage. No fatalities were reported. However, several injuries were recorded. The 12th and 13th tornadoes of the night were EF0 twisters that touched down while the EF3 remained on the ground. These twisters mainly damaged barn doors, snapped tree limbs, and uprooted small trees. By 11:34 p.m., the 14th tornado touched down and would cause low-end EF2 damage in its 11-minute lifetime. It had maximum winds of 135 miles per hour, enough to damage or completely remove roofs and collapse walls, but not strong enough to cause further damage. The 15th tornado touched down in Jamestown in Greene County at 11:48 p.m. It was a weak EF1 tornado, so it only caused minor structural damage, removing roofs, damaging siding, and blowing out windows. This would be the last tornado of the night of May 27th, but 4 more tornadoes occurred in the early morning hours. The first one, which is still considered to be the 16th tornado of the night, touched down at 12:23 a.m. northeast of Jamestown. With its 120-mile-per-hour winds, this EF2 tornado completely destroyed sheds, blew metal debris, and tore off entire roofs. Then, at 12:57 a.m., an EF1 tornado touched down southeast of Circleville in Pickaway County. It managed to completely destroy a house, garage, and partially remove home walls. 4 minutes after this tornado dissipated, at 1:09 a.m., another EF1 touched down south of Tarleton in the same county. Damages here were also limited to roof loss and minor siding damage, though one home under construction had entire walls removed. The last tornado of the night touched down at 1:17 a.m. and was at EF2 strength. It was a quarter of a mile at its peak and was strong enough to blow out an entire second level of a home, throw a large propane tank 20 to 30 feet away, and shove a 7,000-pound truck into a house. A mobile home was even split in half by a tree. This tornado wrapped up the 19 tornadoes that struck Ohio in a single night.
My mom said that God is testing her today, and I'm just thankful that I still have my parents. That's all I can be thankful for. House is replaceable, and that's what I told her. They're not.
Over 100 people were injured during this outbreak, but it was deemed almost a miracle that there was only one fatality.
The one bright spot in that tragedy is that Dale knew the Lord, and he was ready to be with Jesus.
Many expressed gratitude to the meteorologists who stayed live for hours, and to the National Weather Service office that constantly sent out warnings to residents. However, there were also call-outs to the government for faults, such as there being no active siren in Dayton City during this weather emergency.
I can't ever recall hearing sirens.
Those outdoor warning sirens have not been used in the city of Dayton for 2 decades.
People questioning Dayton city leaders on whether this is the right decision.
Despite the scary fact, though, that Dayton City had no warning sirens during this devastating tornado outbreak, luckily, almost all citizens still managed to receive alerts and warnings through other sources.
Had it not been for my cell phone, I wouldn't have known anything.
We didn't hear anything. If it weren't for Channel 7, we wouldn't know anything about it.
What came after a continuous marathon of tornadoes popping across the state was the devastating reality of people suddenly not having a home to return to. and communities missing many crucial buildings needed for daily life. However, the tornado relief efforts that poured into the heavily affected counties alleviated some of the victims' pain. National organizations like Operation Barbecue Relief, Red Cross, and Salvation Army were quick to provide essentials such as shelters and meals to victims.
This is Pastor David. You know, there's been a lot of damage in kind of the Butler Township area and all through North Dayton. If you want to look for ways to give financially, you can do it through our church app.
Donations quickly reached millions, and neighbors helped each other salvage what was left of their homes or clear debris. Today, more than 5 years since this disastrous outbreak happened, most of the impacted communities in Ohio have bounced back to their regular life. However, of course, the emotional and physical trauma still lingers for many people, especially for those in the Dayton area.